Whenever I get asked what my favorite lens is, I'll often say the Sony 90mm macro, even though in recent years it has started to feel a bit dated and underperforms some alternatives in the market. Well, now, with the release of this, Sony's 100mm f2.8 macro G Master, which basically feels like a Mark II of the 90mm, I can once again comfortably say that this is my favorite lens. Let's get undone.
Gerald Undone. He's crazy.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and I wrote this video on horseback. So first up, for disclosure, Sony lent me this lens so I could make this review. They didn't pay me for this coverage, and they don't get to preview it before it goes live, but this video does have an actual sponsor, and that's Storyblocks. So physically, this new lens is quite similar to the old one. It's a little bit longer than a 90mm though, and weighs about 40 grams more, coming in at 646 grams, but they feel very similar when mounted to a body. They're both stabilized, have a focus limiter, and thankfully, Sony kept my favorite feature of the 90mm, the focus clutch. Pulling down the focus ring switches over to manual focus with witness marks and hard stops, making it easy to set your lens to maximum reproduction. This focus ring is a bit different though. It's larger on the 100mm and has a grippier texture. This new lens also boasts welcome inclusions like an aperture ring that can be declicked and locked, a second function button, and a full-time DMF switch, all things the 90mm was lacking. And the front filter diameter was increased from 62mm to 67mm, which is better since it matches many other modern Sony lenses, thus reducing the need to carry more step-up rings. But the biggest advantage of this new lens over the previous one is its ability to use Sony's 1.4 and 2 times teleconverters, which when equipped can bring this lens all the way to a 2.8:1 macro ratio, which is awesome. And I'll show you an example of that when we get into the sample images. On the inside, it also features a significantly improved autofocus system. The original 90mm was using a much older direct drive SSM, where this new lens features 4 of Sony's latest gen XD linear motors, which are quieter and rated to be 1.9 times faster than the old lens and capable of the 120 frames per second burst speed on the A9 III. Back when I reviewed Tamron's 90mm macro, I showed the difference linear motors make compared to the older DD SSM, and it's even more pronounced here. But there's a more subjective component to it as well. I always found the 90mm to be less reliable when autofocusing at very close range. It would sometimes jump around from infinity to minimum or struggle to be precise. This new lens, however, just feels right, even when autofocusing super close. Focus breathing is still an issue though, but it's hard to judge this category fairly. Focus breathing is when your field of view changes as you focus, but to be fair, if you're using this lens at portrait distances, you might not notice the breathing. And unlike the 90mm, this new lens is compatible with Sony's focus breathing compensation, which would make those non-macro situations pretty well breathing corrected. But once you start to get down to minimum focus, even with breathing compensation enabled, your frame is going to change a lot. It's just very hard to compensate for focus breathing on a lens that doubles as a portrait lens and a 1.4:1 macro lens focusing at just 26 centimeters. But it is something to keep in mind if you want to do focus bracketing into macro stacking, as your frame will change quite a bit, making the stacking operation tedious and likely error-ridden. You'll probably still need rails, even with compensation enabled on this lens. But focus breathing is pretty much the only flaw of this lens, because as you're about to see in the sample images, everything else is damn near perfect. Now, while I set up to show you those images, let me take a minute to tell you about Storyblocks, the sponsor of today's video. So Storyblocks is a stock media platform that offers unlimited downloads of diverse and high-quality content for one predictable subscription cost. Choose a monthly or annual plan and enjoy a library of over 1 million HD and 4K video files, images, and motion graphics templates, including a continually expanding inventory of DaVinci Resolve templates that I've come to really appreciate. And more importantly, all of those assets are created by real people sharing real experiences. Because in this age of artificial intelligence, where an increasing volume of what we see online is generated by AI, Storyblocks is proud to be providing authentic stock content created by actual artists that AI can't replicate. Plus, anything you download from Storyblocks is 100% royalty-free with clear-cut licensing, so you can focus on creating, not worrying about usage rights. Their platform is incredibly easy to use, and the library is frequently restocked with commission content based on customer demand to ensure you'll have access to files that are not only high quality, but fresh and diverse. And now, you get 3 extra months free when you sign up for an annual plan. Just go to storyblocks.com/undone to take advantage of this limited time offer. Okay, so for this first shot here, I wanted to talk a little bit about minimum focus distance and what you can expect with reproduction ratios. So this is the 90mm at its minimum focus distance, which was 28 centimeters, which is 0.92 feet on the 90mm. And that's a 1:1 reproduction ratio, where on the 100mm, as you can see here, we're closer because it has a minimum focus distance of 26 centimeters, which is 0.86 feet, so a little bit closer, but it's also a longer focal length. So those two things combined get you a reproduction of 1.4 1 versus 1 to 1. And you can see that it's quite a bit closer. However, like I said, you can also put a 2x teleconverter on, and now on the right, you see it says 200 millimeters, and we are twice as close as we were before, and even further than on the 90mm. So that's the difference between the 90mm at 1 to 1 and the 100mm with the 2x teleconverter on. Pretty significant. Now, for the rest of these comparisons, the 100mm is going to be on the left. Just wanted to clarify that. This one's just a look at sharpness to see if there's been any improvement. The 90mm was always considered pretty sharp, but again, it's many years old now. So let's punch in here and see if we can see a difference. And yes, the new 100mm is actually significantly sharper in the center over the 90mm. And the same is true if you look out into the corners. The 100mm is sharper in every single corner quite significantly, I would say, compared to the 90mm. Here we're taking a look at chromatic aberration, specifically longitudinal chromatic aberration, which is color fringing on out of focus areas to the foreground and the background. Usually this is only resolved by stopping down, so we want as little as possible. And the 90mm was always pretty good. You can see that even on the right, there's not a ton. I am seeing just a hair of like a teal fringing on the right, and I'm not really seeing that on the left. Here's a couple practical examples of that, also showing lateral fringing. I think I was focused here on the basketball net, and first of all, crazy sharp. Like, just look at the detail here, but also there's no fringing at all in any of these areas, which is great to see. And another usually pretty revealing test is you shoot a tree branch against the sky, and yeah, there's almost no fringing whatsoever on either the bottom or the top of this branch. Talking about bokeh here, the 100mm lens is actually using an 11-bladed iris, where the 90mm only had a 9-bladed iris. I would say that the 100mm looks slightly smoother, but it's not a huge difference here. And the quality of the bokeh is not that different either. There is a more distinct sort of outer membrane on the 90mm, which has been smoothed out a bit on the 100, which is nice. However, if we change up our shot a little bit, we can see that both still have cat's eye and a little bit of cutting in the corners. I think the 100mm is a little bit better here. And also, I do think that you can see the 9 blades a little bit more prominently, especially with some of this sort of uneven stuff down here, where the 100mm is definitely smoother. Quick check on distortion. I didn't expect there to be much distortion or vignetting, and as you can see in this shot, there's hardly any vignetting corner to corner, and distortion is, I mean, the lines look really straight to me. Flare is slightly improved on the 100mm as well. You can see in the 90mm image on the right that we're getting a few more artifacts from the sun there. And it seems like the color and the shape of the flare is a little bit more subdued on the 100mm as well. And this can be seen more so when looking at Sunstars. Now, I wouldn't really call either of these lenses particularly good for Sunstars, but the 100mm is better. And also there's less color pollution when you get some flare. The flare on the 100mm is just sort of a nice glowing circle, where on the 90mm, there's some green in there and it's a little bit blotchy and weird. These next few shots are just sort of random autofocus sharpness tests. As I was saying, there's sort of a subjective improvement where if you're just taking this lens, you have the full focus range available, you have it in autofocus, and you're just kind of like walking up and taking pictures of things, it just sort of nails it, and it's more responsive and it feels better. Now, these aren't controlled macro shots of insects, but I just kind of walked up and took a picture of this fly as close as I get without him flying away. And just look at the focus is nailed at the eye. Like, look at the detail here. It's really, really good. I have another example here. Tried a different angle and tried it again and nailed it once again. Here's an example to show two things. One, how the focus transitions occur, because both the improved bokeh, the 11-bladed iris, and when we talk more about portraits, this lens is producing more pleasing out of focus areas, and the transitions between them are better. The 90mm was always a little bit busier in the background. So just kind of wanted to show this to see how creamy you can get the backgrounds and how it transitions from in focus to out of focus areas. It's very nice. Here's a few just for color and for detail. Some yellows, really rich, really vibrant, really good detail. Tiny little grape tomato. Again, really, really, really good detail. Like, look at all these little, like the pores being filled with light, and really rich, nice reds. And then, I don't know, I'm just taking pictures of cellar spiders around the house now, just to see if it, again, would grab focus. And yeah, incredibly sharp, and really impressed with how you can just walk up and take a photo of something random and, like, look at this. It just nails it every single time. And the little chompers on that guy. And now, talking about the portraiture, it's hard to get my model here to hold the exact same pose, so there will be slight differences. What I want you to look at is whether or not your eye is being drawn to the background more or less on each lens. And I find with the 100mm, it's very clearly a portrait. There's the face and everything else is a little bit blurred away. Where on the 90mm, it always found a way to keep a little bit of the autofocus areas kind of noticeable. And it can create some cool effects, if you're, doing some kind of like autumn shoots with leaves and stuff, and you can get a little bit of like, character in there. But if you're looking for more of a classic buttery portrait, the 100mm is clearly better at that. Also, I noticed that the color I felt was slightly more natural and pleasing on the 100mm than the 90mm. Here's another example I think really illustrates the same point. The fence in the background on the 100mm is less important than on the 90mm. The 90mm really kind of, shows it off a little bit more. Also, that sharpness and color difference I was talking about is quite pronounced here in this comparison as well. And that's pretty much it. This is a solid and welcome upgrade from the 90mm and a fantastic lens overall. And just like the 90mm, if you enjoy macro, this is probably one of the most versatile lenses you can have in your Sony kit. All right, I'm done.